Alright, so the way I'll structure this, I'll give you like a few stories of like me barefoot running, and then afterwards I'll get into all the nitty gritty science for those who care. So, I guess the best place to start is track. So I remember in track there was everybody knows like track events, running events. One of them being the 4x1. So a relay race with four people. They pass the baton, go around the track, and the way we did it during track practice was you just have every single, like for the boys 8th grade 4x1, you'd have every 8th grade boy who wanted to be in the 4x1 race, and then the top four would be in it. Perfect way to do it, right? And I remember in like the first few times we did this, every single time I'd take off my shoes because so you don't realize how fast you can go until you take shoes off, and it's completely counter to what everyone talks about, right? Like wear running shoes, you need the arch support, the padding, and all that. The human body is built and designed for running. Okay, I'll get in all the science and like evolution and all that later. But trust me when I say you don't know how fast you actually are until you take the shoes off. But I would be doing this, and every time I'd be getting like just like third or second place, or sometimes fourth if it was a bad day or whatever, fluke, whatever. But every single time I'd be making it onto this relay team, and I'm naturally fast, but like it was like how would I describe it? Like a new gear, basically. I would unlock once I took the shoes off. And we did these things. They were, I think in high school they're called repeat twos. I don't know what they were called in middle school. But basically it's a 400-meter track all the way around. You'd run 200 meters, and then you'd walk back to the other side. You'd rest for a few minutes, then you'd run another 200. And it's for endurance and all that, but at the end, everybody else would be tired, and usually I'd run these whole things barefoot, not just taking my shoes off, wearing socks, but like completely barefoot. And every single time I would run way faster with my shoes off. I would outrun everybody, and I would not be huffing or puffing. I'd be nose breathing, completely calm the entire time. And I'd come back. I'd be the first one to get back, and we did like 10 of these in a row. And every single time I was the fastest and I had the most endurance. And I'm pretty damn sure it's because I took my shoes off. And I know, I've actually got like a control variable here. I remember doing this, like the first few times I did it with my shoes on. And I was like, I don't want. It is pretty weird actually. It's a little socially abnormal to be the guy on track with going barefoot, your dogs out, as they said. But when I was going with my shoes on, I felt like what's the word? Like lethargic, I guess. Like like in a dream when you're trying to there's like something you're trying to run away from, but you're so slow and you're so tired. That's what it felt like to run with shoes on. And after running with shoes on my whole life, it's like you kind of just get used to that. But once you take the shoes off, it's like running actually becomes fun once you take the shoes off. Like sometimes like around the neighborhood, I've got cross country coming up and all that. I train for athleticism and all that. But sometimes around the neighborhood, I'll just go for a run just because it's fun. Just because it's fun to do the motion of running when you're barefoot. And it was like, but anyway, yeah, during these 200-meter runs, these repeat twos, you could call them, it's so it was like a night and day difference. Like I activated like a whole new gear. When I had shoes on, I was just trying to move my legs fast and push through sludge. That's kind of what it felt like. But taking the shoes off, I could just glide through the air. And it was one of the most euphoric experiences I've genuinely ever had. Euphoria, the feeling after exercise. Like I got the feeling after exercise during the hard exercise. And the only thing I changed was I took my shoes off. And it's going through grass and all that, so it's not like I'm going to step on a needle, get AIDS or something. But it's just incredible. And then one time in track, I went so far as to actually run so my main event for middle school track was the 1600, which is 4 full laps around the track. It's a full mile. And I decided just going barefoot in one of these miles. Every time I'd wear these things. I remember they look like clown shoes or bowling shoes when you wear them. And I remember during track, one of my friends, he called them the clown joggers. And I mean, yeah, every single time, to school, to track, whatever, to any race or something, I'd always roll up with those barefoot shoes with the really wide I don't know, a toe box, yeah, really wide toe box. And they looked a little goofy, but they genuinely did increase my performance some way. It's just good for your feet. You know, I could go into all that. That's a whole other thing. But I'd always wear these to races. But one day I just decided, you know, what if I actually just went barefoot? So I asked like the director of the track meet or whatever you'd call him. And he said, you know, I asked him, can I go barefoot? And he said, yeah, I mean, sure, if you want. I don't know why you would, but you can. And so I did, and I actually, I got first place in that. I actually got, and you know, one of my friends, one of my teammates in track, he got a picture of it, like me at the finish line, like barefoot, the guy behind me, and I was like smiling during it. It was just like, it was such a, like a crackhead looking picture, but I actually got first place in the 1600 by running barefoot. Now there were these two other kids who then like they kind of whooped my ass in like the in the final. I got third place, first year track. I thought it was pretty impressive, but yeah. And then so yeah, that's it with track. And then another school relating story here. There was this one class I had, and this teacher sometimes he'd let us go out on walks, and every time I'd want to race my friends, and you know. The reasons for why I wanted the race, that's a little redacted. But the whole thing was, before every race, first thing I would do is I'd take my shoes off. And every single time I'd dust these guys. I don't know why, I always wanted to race them, because I just liked winning, you know, other reasons, whatever. I don't know why they always accepted it. I'm glad they did, because it was fun. But, I don't know, man, they kind of knew what was going to happen every time, but, you know, cool friends, man. I'm grateful they did what they did. But every single time I'd take my shoes off, and the same thing it'd be the same effect I had during track. I would just be like gliding through the air almost. You know, like when you run up and down, it's like, you know, or no, when you run forward, like especially with shoes on, I notice, you're like bobbing up and down, and eventually that alone makes you tired. But when you're going barefoot and you're like running fast, you have like zero vertical oscillation. It's like, it's no like waviness, it's just like a perfect straight line. You literally feel like you're gliding through the air. There's no way I can explain that unless you just take the shoes off and go barefoot. But anyway, now I'll get into the science for those who care. So basically the whole idea is that the human body, like the musculoskeletal, I think it's musculoskeletal structure of the feet, they're perfectly made for running. Alright, bipedal organisms, and the only ones that like completely upright organisms, only ones that exist in the world are the Homo sapiens, right? Humans, you and me. And we're like essentially like evolved for long distance running. And the entire idea behind the musculoskeletal structure of the feet is energy conservation. Okay, so basically, usually when you wear running shoes, you heel stomp. Your heel strikes down, and the entire reason people can get injured while running, it's pretty crazy actually. Look at this. It's like you are way more likely to get an injury while running than powerlifting. Which is kind of crazy if you're putting like 500 pounds on your back, squatting down, bringing it back up. That's a lot of stress and a lot of tension on a lot of areas of the body, but somehow you're significantly less likely to get injured from doing that than just running. And a huge factor of this is shoes. So another thing is like the kinetic energy, right? When you strike down onto the ground, it's a lot of weight on a really small area, right? That kinetic energy goes somewhere, and whether it gets repurposed into more forward momentum or up into your body depends on if you're wearing shoes or not, or rather the kinds of shoes you're wearing, what kinds of things you have on the bottom of your feet. Ideally you'd want to just be barefoot, but what happens when you wear like running shoes, right? This kinetic energy, when you heel strike, it just goes straight up, just like straight up the leg, through the calf, through the knee, through the hips, and through the lower back. And this is why people can get like hurting calves or knee problems or even just like lower back pain from just running. And it's a real thing. I mean, I've felt the difference, like running with shoes on, even barefoot shoes sometimes. Your lower back can hurt, your knees can kind of hurt after, but barefoot, none of that. All those ailments just gone. And it's like, and then the thing with like running barefoot, it's a huge thing of science. This is, so basically, so I'll just explain how like the running system of your body works. So there's four 4 layers of muscle in the feet, and these muscles, they hold up the arch. Like it's some people are flat-footed, some people have arches. I don't believe this is genetic. I believe if you have a flattened arch, it's because you've been wearing shoes with arch support for far too long. And in the same way, when you put an arm into a cast and then you take the cast off, the muscles atrophied. When muscles aren't moving, they'll atrophy because the body doesn't see a reason to maintain them if they're not being used. So if you've got physical structures holding up the arch, the muscles will atrophy. And I believe that's how people get flat arches. But the muscles that hold up this arch, the way it works is when you land on the ball of your foot, your forefoot, as opposed to the heel, like sensory nerves on the skin of the foot, extremely sensitive nerves, as sensitive as the fingertips and the face actually. And when these sensory nerves, they pick up information about the ground, they send signals to these muscles to contract and flatten the arch. So essentially kinetic energy, you strike the ground, kinetic energy with your foot, and it tells the arch to flatten out and store this kinetic energy. And the same thing happens with the Achilles tendon. It's almost like a spring, right? You punch down onto the ground, and your Achilles tendon will contract, and it'll store up potential energy like a spring. And then once your foot leaves the ground again, it'll propel you forward, more forward momentum. So it's essentially transforming kinetic energy into more forward momentum, which I think is pretty cool. But that doesn't happen when you're wearing shoes, 'cause